Hey, my friends, you are tuned into a bonus episode of Highly Sensitive, Happily Married podcast. I usually only do 3 podcasts every 4 weeks, but lately I've been inspired to offer you a little bit more on that 4th week. So this is a second bonus in the last couple months for you. And today we are going to talk about the fact that the best love, the most lasting love, comes from understanding your own brain, how it works, and your own nervous system and how it works, and learning how to support them both and guide them both and be in charge of them both. You know what I mean by the best love. I know you every once in a while have seen couples like those old couples that are holding hands as they walk around town, that are talking together, that are laughing together, that obviously have figured out this thing called love. I recently saw a sweet old couple where he just bent down, gave his wife a little kiss on her cheek, and I just thought it was the sweetest. And this was like way many years into their marriage, right? So that's something you can have when you understand how your brain works and your nervous system and how to support them into having that kind of love. And I thought it would be fun, instead of talking at length about that just on this episode, is actually giving you kind of a directory in this podcast of other episodes where I've talked about this and given you instructions on how to do this and, given you insight into how your own brain and how your own nervous system function. So I'm going to say some things first, and then I'm going to offer you this directory. So this could be a great episode for you to take some notes on, just so you can write down the podcast episodes that I mention that you think would be good ones for you to dive into to learn more about your internal world and your brain and your nervous system and how to use it to create more love and long-lasting love in your marriage. In my years learning about love and being a marriage coach, I have noticed that where many relationship improving books and teachings and, podcasts even fall short is in teaching you how to shift your internal domain, which is actually the source of the actions you take, the way you show up, the things you say or don't say, right? And of course, your experience. It's actually the source of your experience in your marriage and how much or how little love and connection you have in your relationship. So I want to share a little bit on why the internal, which I mean your brain and your nervous system specifically, why that internal is the source of all of this. And then I'll dive into giving you that directory, that list of podcast episodes you can listen to so you can get a better understanding of your own internal, right, nervous system and brain and how to work with it, so you can start making these sustained changes and improvements in your marriage today. And of course, this is much of the deep work my clients do with me that has them leaving our time together with a totally transformed marriage and even totally transformed life in the very best of ways. So this is no small thing. This is everything in your life and in your marriage. So the first big truth that I really want you to understand is that your internal, really your brain and nervous system, are the biggest obstacles to the love you want. And they are the biggest provider of the love you want, right? The biggest source of it as well. When you understand how they work and what they need to support them into that love and all the good things in your relationship. Yeah? Because our experience of everything in our lives everything in your life, everything in my life, always comes down to you in your own life and me in my own life. It always comes down to us and what's going on inside of us. And again, our brain and our nervous systems are the biggest source of what's going on inside of us. I love the way Rick Hansen, who's a neuropsychologist, super expert on the brain and how it influences our lives and our relationships even. He says, I love how he put it. He says, every pleasure and pain I have had, every love and loss is the result of activity within this glistening blob of flesh, my brain. Now, yes, we do have to do things differently in our marriages than we have been if we want a different and better relationship with our spouse. So action's important, changing how we do things, right? But to naturally and easily do that and to do it in a sustained way, we need to shift things at the source, right? By understanding and learning how to guide our own brains and nervous systems, as I usually call them, our mind, body, heart system, because there's also some stuff here with our heart. It's all connected, right? Learn how to guide our perceptions and our emotions. And then the doing, the actions, the changing of actions is easy, powerful, effective, and natural. So, our actions do lead to the results we have in our lives and in our marriages. What we say matters. How we act with our partner matters. But the source of those actions comes from our brain and our nervous system, our thinking and our feeling. So we got to understand our brains. And I want to be clear that what I mean by this is not knowing all the parts anatomically. Even I have trouble remembering the different names for things in our brains. I'm always getting them mixed up. But learning about that and how those parts function, that can be helpful and interesting. But to understand how they create your experience and actions is really what I'm talking about, right? And then how to work with these brains that we have, that we're blessed with, and right, how to work with them and use them best to use them, right? In other words, I like thinking of it as getting the owner's manual for your human brain and nervous system, right? And learning it and reading it and understanding it and following that owner's manual. Yeah? Because most of our marriage unhappiness actually comes from a lack of understanding how our own brains work and how to be in charge of them and how to guide them in such a way that we create a much more loving relationship with our partner. Without knowing how to guide your brain, which very few of us has ever learned, right? Very few of us have ever learned to do that because it's actually very new. It's a modern, very new, recently in the past 20 years, past 5 years, there's constantly new understandings about the brain. So very few of us have integrated that and learned how to actually make use of that information in a practical way in our lives. So without knowing how to guide your brain, there's no doubt you're going to be experiencing significantly more conflict and discord and frustration and worries and insecurities and problems and hurts and feelings of not being loved and valued in your relationship. So in other words, you're going to be experiencing a lot more unhappiness with your significant other than you would be if you knew how your brain and your nervous system actually work and actually learn how to be in charge of them and get in charge of them. The truth, which is really backed by all sorts of cool and interesting scientific research, is that your unguided brain is what makes your marriage so hard, right? Not your partner, your unguided brain, and maybe his unguided brain for him as well. But this is actually good news because it's something you have control over. You have control over your brain once you learn how to. And to learn how to guide your brain, to have the owner's manual of your brain and use it, it's important to understand what your brain is kind of doing in the first place, what its natural inclinations are, that's leading to all the discord, all the stress, all the dissatisfaction in your marriage. And by learning it around your marriage, like by learning about your brain, you're going to also learn about how your brain does that in all places of your life. So you want to understand your brain. You also want to understand it, how it functions like by default, when it's in default mode, when it's unguided, so you don't get so freaked out or so upset when something happens. Or when you do start to find yourself in a reactive space, when you do find yourself upset, you aren't so freaked out by that, right? So that like instead of blaming that experience on yourself, like there's something personally wrong with me, right? Or you don't just blame it on your partner. And so you don't just introduce more negativity into your experience and into your relationship. You instead can be like, oh, right. This is like what my brain naturally wants to do. This is what a human brain wants to do. This is part of my humanness. This is how my brain and my nervous system function automatically. The more you understand the basics of what goes on in your human brain, in the human brain in general, and then human nervous system, what goes on in those places in us that to actually create the hard experiences we have in our relationships, the easier it is to actually introduce and bring more peace and acceptance and love and solutions and connection and positivity to your relationship. The easier it is to catch yourself and your partner when you kind of fall under the trance of the normal default human brain and nervous system, and be able to guide it back to places of closeness and of ease and of intimacy and love. Another way of saying this is like when we understand how our brains and nervous system work, kind of like in their default mode, when we're not kind of being conscious of them and we haven't sort of retrained them, rewired them to be more supportive. And we do find ourselves, feeling reactive, getting triggered, going into fight or flight mode, thinking in this negative way, seeing things in through like a negative filter, as I've talked about on various podcast episodes, which I'll point you to in a few moments here. It's so much easier to meet ourselves in this part of our humanness with love instead of rejection, instead of judging it, instead of thinking something's terribly wrong with us, instead of feeling ashamed for having these thoughts or having these emotions or getting reactive, right? All of which only adds a lot of pain on top of the pain we're already having, on top of the upset or the reactions we're already experiencing. So being able to hold that, to meet that part of our humanness with understanding and love even, will allow you to have so much more ease with these difficult aspects of our humanness. All of us people have these same sorts of brains and nervous systems. So we can understand them, we can meet them with more love and understanding, and therefore have more ease with the difficultness of ourselves and of our partners, right? Our partner's humanness, our own humanness. And this is so powerful. It frees us up to have so much more agency and to just have such a sweeter experience of life. So understanding your brain gives you so much power and more freedom, and can bring in so much more sort of grace or forgiveness or acceptance of humanness. And that's going to bring a lot of peace into your life. But then on top of just understanding it and being like, oh yeah, here's that part of being human again, right? But then being able to consciously guide it, consciously use the tool that your brain and your nervous system are, that is like a superpower. A superpower that's really going to make your marriage amazing, that will make your whole life amazing. So it's really no small thing. It's a huge thing to have the owner's manual of your brain and know how to use it, right? It's really everything in your life. So I'm just going to give you a couple quick examples of what I mean by understanding your brain, like learning some things about your brain, having the knowledge and understanding of it. So in the simplest sense, here's one thing. Our brains take the shape of what it attends to. What my brain rests its attention on, it's going to go create more of that. So what I mean by that is like if it rests on problems, if it tends to focus a lot of its attention on what's wrong, on stressors, on negative things, it's going to actually become more reactive over time. And it's going to find more problems and generate, therefore, more negative experiences. It's going to become, in other words, sensitized to the negative. So if your brain has a natural tendency, which it does, we all do, because of the negativity bias. So if your brain's like tending to notice problems and stressors, it's actually going to become more sensitized over your lifetime, over the weeks and months of your life here, to problems, to the negative, which means you're going to kind of have more and more experiences of the negative. So if you've ever felt like your life is like getting harder over time and not easier, it's partly because of this natural way our brain is wired, this natural bias or tendency of the human brain. But the cool thing here is the opposite is also true. So when we put more of our attention on good stuff, right, on what's going well in our lives, on how we do something well, on how our partner did that nice thing, right? When we attend to that, we actually create more experiences of the good and sensitize our brain to actually being able to see more of that and feel more of that and have more quote unquote good experiences in our life and in our marriage. So obviously, if you understand this, you can use it to your advantage, right? You can actively compensate for the natural tendency of attending to like what's not good between you or what's towards the negative. You can compensate by paying attention to what is good between you or what is good in your spouse, right? So that's one of the reasons why understanding your brain is so powerful. You can start to take advantage of it. Another example of something that's really powerful to understand about your brain is that, remember, what we believe and think and perceive, much of which is actually influenced by where we put our attention and what state our nervous system is in or what it's been conditioned to see as a threat or as safe. So what we believe and think and perceive, which is affected by our nervous system, right, leads to how we feel, like I said earlier, and then how we act, right? And so, again, I said this already today, but I want to reiterate it. How we act determines the results in our lives and in our relationships, right? So by understanding that that's how our brain and nervous system and mind, body, heart system work, right, allows you to take a look at what thoughts and beliefs are behind the actions that actually hurt our marriage and the ones that heal and serve our marriage, right? And then to consciously guide our thoughts and our beliefs to ones that serve us. So again, this is like knowing this is so powerful, and applying it and using it is going to change absolutely everything in your life and in your marriage. So these two things, these are just a couple of many things to understand about the human brain and how it shapes our lives and our marriages. And even just knowing and working with these two things about how your brain operates will absolutely, utterly change your marriage and life. But of course, there's more to really have this owner's manual and really be able to most effectively use this incredible tool that is your brain, that is your nervous system. And yours is especially exquisite because it's a highly sensitive one, which is even more powerful when you get that owner's manual. Now, when people coach with me in Treasured, my small group program, I give them this owner's manual. I teach them all they need to know to understand their own brain and nervous systems so that they can have so much more peace with it and so they can be in charge of it, so they can guide it, so they can use this superpower that they innately have in them, in this brain, in this nervous system, but they just have never learned how to use to create the life they want, the marriage they want, to create the emotions that they want and the experience of life that they want. So if you really want to make lasting change in your marriage and to be able to keep making those types of changes in your life in any area, you've got to join Treasured. And if you're truly committed to the biggest, most lasting improvements in, again, not only your marriage, but your emotional well-being and your life in general as a highly sensitive person, you really do want to be there in Treasured with me. It starts in just a few weeks, so it is time to sign up. You can learn all about it and join at www.lifeisworthloving.com. And you'll see there in the tabs or in the homepage, it says Coach with Me Treasured. You can click that, or I'll put the direct link to learn all about it in the show notes of this show. And also, if you still have more questions, if you looked at that, if you're seriously considering it, but you haven't listened to the bonus episode I made that answers your questions, it's like the Q&A episode that I made a few weeks back. Absolutely go find that in this podcast. It will give you some more good answers and help you decide if it's a great fit for you right now. And if you're still thinking about it, or you just know you're not going to join right now, today, I want to give you some podcast episodes that will help you understand your brain and your nervous system better, like I promised earlier. And so you can start stepping into a bit more agency over them and be in a bit more control of your life and your marriage. I do want to reiterate, though, that a podcast episode, or even listening to a bunch of them, cannot replace or equal real hands-on experience of the ins and the outs of the tools and the skills that a coaching program like Treasured will get you. Nor can it replace having experienced loving eyes on your brain and on your marriage to help you make it what you want. That's me, the experienced loving eyes, who can see your brain in ways you might not be able to see your brain, and who can zone in on the areas unique to you in your marriage that need to be examined and shifted for you to have the marriage you want. So if you want the real deal change, then come coach with me in Treasured. All right, well, I guess I had more to say than I expected here, but I'm going to dive in now into the semi-short directory of podcast episodes that are going to help you get more insight and understanding and even some more agency over your own brain and nervous system. So now's the time to take down some notes, listen for the ones that sound interesting to you. I'm going to start with pointing you to the first my top 10 episodes that I think is really going to help you understand specifically your brain. I should say the nervous system and the brain are totally intertwined, but when I'm just talking about the nervous system, when I kind of say that separately, what I mean is more like your body. And we can work with the sort of non-cognitive part of our nervous system, the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous systems, through direct communication with it, we could say, which is most often through the body, although it does share sometimes some of the same languages as getting through to the brain does. So I'm going to share I'll give you a little guide for some podcast episodes on the nervous system in a few minutes. But right now, we're going to dive into the top 10 episodes that will really help you understand and work with your human brain. The first one is episode 6, How to Work with Your 2 Brains for More Love. An absolute essential. The next one that I'm going to recommend is episode 74, which is the 2 brain biases that work against love. The third suggestion in this part is episode 13, What You Make It Mean Means Everything in Love. Super good one. And episode 14, The Best News About Your Feelings. So good for highly sensitive people to understand that, what I talk about there. And episode 16 is the next one I recommend, and that's called Uncovering the Source of Relationship Pain. Also, so key. I'm just going to say that with all of these. Maybe I'll stop saying that now. Episode 55 is one I highly recommend after you've listened to those other ones. And again, you don't have to listen to all of these, of course, but I do suggest these top 10 you especially spend some time with if you haven't yet. So episode 55 is called One Tiny Thing That Seriously Dulls the Love in Your Marriage. The next one is Should Pain. That's episode 65. Again, that's called should, as in he should do that. I should do that. Should Pain. And then the last 2, actually, wait, there's 3 more here for this top 10 is episode 67, Assume Positive Intent. This is something we don't do nearly enough of in our marriages a lot of the time. So, Assume Positive Intent, episode 67. The next one is Making a Habit of Love Without Conditions. This is 79. Does explain, help you understand your brain and why it doesn't always fall into love so easily, and will really help you start to make much more of a habit of love, which is going to build so much goodness into your marriage and your life. All right, so that's episode 79. The last one in this top 10 here is episode 90, The Power of Marriage Goals. I talk a lot about the brain in that one and help you understand why it stops you from achieving what you want in your life and how to work with it so you can actually achieve your goals in your life in general, but especially, obviously, for your marriage, for your love life. Okay. So the next little bunch of episodes that I'm going to point you to, and again, just perk your ears or go to the ones that perk your ears, right? That catch your attention and sound intriguing to you. But these next ones are a little bit more generalized. All of them still will really help you understand your brain, understand more about your nervous system even, although I address that a little less in these episodes than the brain, and will really help you start to work with them and things you can do, ways you can start consciously, intentionally working with this amazing human brain that you have for your marriage, for what you want in your life as a highly sensitive woman. So I'm just going to share these in a somewhat chronological order. So in this set, the first one I want to point you to is Calming Annoyance and Irritation, which is episode 10. Yes, that's a good one. Episode 17 is the next one. It's called 10 Beliefs to Improve Your Marriage. The next one is episode 20. It's called Turn Your Not So Good Husband into an Amazing One, the first step. This is really good. This one really helps understand the brain and why it wants to make your husband into the bad guy. All right, the next one is episode 21. It's called Enjoy Your Partner More by Using Love Sight. This one's so key. I could have put it in that first set, but I don't know. I left it over in the second set. So good. Both of these last two, 20 and 21, super worth a good listen. All right, episode 35. self-worth in love. Yes. Self-worth is so key. And if you've ever thought maybe you have just a little inkling that you suffer from some low self-esteem or low self-worth or low self-confidence, this is a key one. Actually, most humans do. Even narcissists, actually their problem is low self-worth. It's very common and it leads to all sorts of challenges in love. So episode 35 is a great one. The next recommendation, this is slightly out of order, is episode 33, which is called Where a Culture of Love and Safety in Your Marriage Begins. And this one does touch on the nervous system, because that's like the nervous system is where we feel safe or unsafe, right? So I do talk about the nervous system in this episode. I also talk about the brain and how we can create more safety in ourselves and therefore make our marriage way more full of love and security and all the good things. So that's a great episode. The last two in this section, and the truth is I could have pointed you to lots more episodes, but I wanted to try to be somewhat not overwhelming. So I just pulled out two more for this part, the next one is episode 36. It's called Calming Emotional Reactivity for HSPs. And then episode 53 is the last one in this section that I'm going to recommend, and it is called Loving Humanness. And I partially put this one in here because it is at the core of my philosophy. It is so key in having love in your life and having a marriage that you love is being able to love humanness. And I think in this episode, I talk about how that's hard, what gets in our way, and how you can open yourself up to loving humanness more. All right, so let's move into the top 2 episodes for the nervous system, and then I'll throw in one extra one that's just really so related. So here are 3 more episodes. Episode 11, this is called the HSP Mind, Body, Heart Slump. It talks all about, it's like nervous system 101 for you. Well, some of nervous system 101. There's a little more to it, but this is a good starting place. And then episode 52, this is an interview, a conversation I had with Karen C.L. Anderson. And we talked about, when the episode is called, Tending Your Trauma and Nervous System Responses. So that's episode 52. Both of those together will give you some great insight into your nervous system and how to work with it to be way happier in your life and in your marriage as well. And the last episode here that I wanted to point you to is episode 44. It's called Being a Happy, Fulfilled Wife. And of course, if you're unhappy in general, it's going to be a whole lot harder to be happy in your marriage. And so we dive into more on what that means in that episode 44. Now, again, I want to remind you, because I know us highly sensitive people, we can be like, I'm so overwhelmed, right? We get there easily. And what I want to say is, don't let yourself be overwhelmed. These are just suggestions. These are just ideas. Start with one. Maybe that's enough for now. Or choose the top 3 and make it a goal for yourself to listen to them over the next week. Yeah? There's no have-tos here. There's no shoulds here. These are just ideas to help support you in having a marriage that you want and you love. So enjoy these and take away all sorts. I hope you take away a lot from them. And if you're ready to take this work further, if you know right now or after you listen to some of these podcasts that you're really excited and interested and intrigued by this work, or you just know you need it, you know you want to make deep changes and huge improvements in your marriage, then join me in Treasured so that you can be like that woman that you see in the coffee shop, in the restaurant, that couple that you see that's just laughing together, that are looking into each other's eyes and smiling, maybe even holding each other's hands or leaning in for a kiss across the table, that seem to have figured this love thing out. Yes, you can be like her. You and your husband can be like them. Join me in Treasured and we will make it happen for you. Again, the link to join and learn more is in the show notes, and you can head over to www.lifeisworthloving.com and you'll find everything you need to know there. All right, my friend, be oh so well.